EQ8 stands as Ableton Live's precision surgical equalizer, the workhorse you'll reach for whenever you need full control over frequency shaping. While Channel EQ handles quick broad strokes and EQ3 excels at DJ-style frequency kills, EQ8 offers up to 8 independently controllable filter bands spanning the full audible spectrum from 20 Hz to 20 kHz, each configurable with multiple filter types. This combination of visual feedback, flexible routing options, and detailed parameter control makes it the go-to choice for serious mixing work, from gentle tonal shaping to aggressive corrective surgery. What distinguishes EQ8 from simpler equalizers isn't just the number of bands, it's the depth of control each band provides. You can choose from multiple filter types per band, adjust bandwidth with surgical precision, enable advanced features like adaptive Q and oversampling, and even process in mid-side mode for stereo-specific corrections. This flexibility means EQ8 can function as a subtle tone shaper on a master bus or an aggressive problem solver on a problematic recording, depending entirely on how you configure it. The Visual Spectrum Analyzer provides real-time feedback on your signal's frequency content. But here's a critical mindset shift. The analyzer confirms what your ears identify, not the other way around. Professional mixing relies on listening first, then using visual tools to verify your decisions. Throughout this chapter, we'll emphasize a diagnostic-first workflow that trains your ears while using EQ8's visual feedback as a secondary reference. Each of EQ8's 8 bands can be configured as one of several filter types, and understanding when to use each is fundamental to effective equalization. Low-cut or high-pass filters remove frequencies below a chosen cutoff point, available in 12 dB, 24 dB, and 48 dB per octave slopes. A 12 dB slope provides gentle roll-off that sounds natural but allows some low-frequency content through. 24 dB offers a good balance of effectiveness and transparency. 48 dB creates an aggressive wall that removes virtually everything below the cutoff. Use low cuts to remove rumble, proximity effect, and unnecessary sub-bass from sources that don't need it. Vocals, guitars, hi-hats, and most synth pads typically benefit from a low cut, somewhere between 60 and 150 Hz, depending on the source. High cut, or low pass, filters work in reverse, removing frequencies above the cutoff with the same slope options. These are less commonly used in mixing, but prove valuable for taming harsh digital sources, creating lo-fi effects, or rolling off unnecessary high-frequency content from bass instruments and kick drums. A gentle 12 dB high cut around 10-12 kHz can soften overly bright recordings without making them sound obviously filtered. Low shelf filters boost or cut all frequencies below a chosen point, creating broad tonal shifts rather than surgical changes. Use these for overall warmth adjustments, boosting below 100 to 200 Hz, or thinning out a mix, cutting below 150-300 Hz. Typical shelf adjustments range from plus or minus 2 to 4 dB. Anything more aggressive usually calls for a different approach. High shelf filters affect all frequencies above the chosen point, making them ideal for adding air and brilliance, boosting above 812 kHz, or reducing harshness and sibilance, cutting above 610 kHz. Like low shelves, keep adjustments moderate. Plus or minus 2 to 4 dB typically achieves the desired effect without creating obvious tonal imbalances. Bell filters, also called parametric or peaking filters, boost or cut a specific frequency range, with the Q parameter controlling how wide or narrow that range is. Bell filters are your surgical tools. Use them for corrective cuts targeting specific problems, with plus or minus 3 to 6 dB typical for corrective work, and for gentle musical boosts that enhance character frequencies. The bell filter's versatility makes it the most used type in detailed mixing work. Notch filters are extremely narrow bell cuts designed to remove specific problematic frequencies like resonances, electrical hum, or ringing. Notch cuts often go deeper than typical bell cuts, negative 12 dB or more, with very narrow Q values, essentially deleting a tiny slice of the spectrum. Use notches sparingly. They solve specific problems but can create audible artifacts if overused or set too wide. The frequency parameter determines where each filter operates, spanning EQ8's full 20 Hz to 20 kHz range. Learning landmark frequencies accelerates your workflow and develops your frequency awareness. Sub-bass 20 to 60 Hz is the felt more than heard foundation. Kick drum subharmonics, bass drops, and 808s live here. Boosting adds weight and physical impact. Cutting tightens the low end and improves clarity. Bass body, 60 to 120 Hz, is the fundamental punch of kick drums and the meat of bass instruments. This range provides warmth and fullness but accumulates quickly when multiple sources compete. The low mid mud zone, 200 to 400 Hz, is the most common problem area in amateur mixes. Excessive buildup here creates boxy, muddy, or woolly sounds. Many sources benefit from gentle cuts in this range. Mid-range 400 Hz to 2 kHz is where most musical information lives, including vocals, guitars, keyboards, and the body of most instruments. Cuts here create space. Boosts add presence but can quickly become harsh or honky. Presence and attack 2 to 5 kHz provides clarity, definition, and the cut that helps sounds punch through a mix. Boost here for intelligibility. Cut to push sounds back in the mix or reduce harshness. Air and brilliance 8 to 16 kHz adds sparkle, shimmer, and the sense of openness. High shelf boosts here add excitement and modern sheen. Cuts reduce harshness and sibilance. EQ8 offers a plus or minus 15 dB gain range per band, but this range represents the extremes rather than typical usage. A fundamental principle, cuts are generally more transparent than boosts. When you boost a frequency, you're adding energy that wasn't prominent in the original signal, which can introduce artifacts, increase noise, and create an EQ'd sound. When you cut, you're revealing what's already there by removing masking frequencies. For corrective work, typical cuts range from -3 to -6 dB. If you find yourself cutting more than 6 to 8 dB, consider whether the problem might be better solved at the source, re-recording, choosing a different sample, or addressing the issue earlier in the signal chain. Boosts rarely need to exceed positive 3 to 4 dB on a well-recorded source. If you're boosting more aggressively, the source material may have fundamental problems that EQ can't solve. The Q parameter controls how wide or narrow each filter's affected range is, spanning from 0.1, very wide, affecting multiple octaves, to 18, extremely narrow, affecting a tiny slice of spectrum. Wide Q from 0.5 to 1.5 is musical, broad shaping that sounds natural and blends smoothly. Use wide Q for general tonal adjustments, shelf-like boost with a bell filter, and any boost you want to sound organic rather than surgical. Medium Q from 2 to 4 is balanced control for moderate corrections and focused enhancements. This range works well for most mixing moves. Narrow Q from 4 to 8 and above is surgical precision for targeting specific problems without affecting surrounding frequencies. Use narrow Q for corrective cuts, removing resonances, and the sweep and identify diagnostic technique. Very narrow Q from 8 to 18 is notch-style cuts for removing extremely specific problems like electrical hum, 50-60 Hz and harmonics, single note resonances, or ringing frequencies. At these settings, the filter affects such a narrow range that boosts sound unnatural. Narrow boosts create resonant ringing because you're emphasizing a tiny frequency band that the ear perceives as artificial and phasey. Scale adjusts the intensity of all active bands simultaneously, functioning like a wet-dry control for your entire EQ curve. At 100%, your settings apply fully. At 50%, all boosts and cuts are halved. This is invaluable for A/B testing. Automate scale between 0% and 100% to hear exactly what your EQ is doing without clicking bypass on individual bands. Analyze enables the real-time spectrum analyzer, displaying the frequency content of your signal overlaid with your EQ curve. The analyzer helps confirm your decisions, but shouldn't drive them. Develop the habit of identifying problems by ear first, then using the analyzer to verify. Oversampling at 4x processes the signal at 4 times the project sample rate, reducing aliasing artifacts that can occur with aggressive high-frequency boosts. Enable this when working with bright sources or making significant boosts above 8 to 10 kHz. The trade-off is increased CPU usage, so reserve it for situations where you hear a difference. Adaptive Q mimics the behavior of classic analog equalizers, automatically narrowing the bandwidth when you boost and widening it when you cut. This creates more musical results because analog EQs naturally exhibited this behavior due to circuit characteristics. Enable adaptive Q when you want a warmer, more vintage character. Disable it when you need precise, consistent bandwidth control. EQ8's mode selector offers 3 routing options that dramatically expand its capabilities. Stereo processes both channels identically, the default mode for most mixing work. Left-right provides independent EQ curves for each channel, useful for correcting asymmetric recordings or creating deliberate stereo effects. Mid-side separates the signal into mid, which is center and mono content, and side, which is the stereo difference components, allowing you to EQ them independently. This is one of EQ8's most powerful features for advanced mixing and mastering work. Mid-side processing applications. The mid-channel contains everything that appears equally in both speakers, typically vocals, kick, snare, bass, and other centered elements. The side channel contains the stereo difference, ambience, reverb tails, wide synths, and panned elements. Tighten bass and stereo, cut low frequencies below 100-150 Hz from the side channel, only to mono your low end. This focuses bass energy in the center, improving punch and translation to mono playback systems without affecting your centered kick and bass. Add width without muddiness. Gently boost high frequencies above 10 kHz on the side channel by +1 to 2 dB to enhance the sense of width and air. Because you're only boosting the stereo difference, the center remains focused while the edges of your mix gain sparkle. Focus vocals. Apply boost to the mid-channel only in the presence range of 2.5 kHz to help vocals cut through without brightening the entire mix. Critical warning, exaggerating side gain can hollow out your mix and destroy mono compatibility. Always check your MS, processing in mono, use utilities with control set to 0% to ensure you haven't created phase problems. The correlation meter should stay between 0 and +1. Negative values indicate phase issues that will cause problems on mono playback systems. The most important EQ skill isn't knowing which frequencies to boost or cut, it's learning to identify problems before reaching for any processing. Amateur mixers often EQ reactively, adding bands because everyone says to cut 400 Hz, or boosting presence because a YouTube tutorial recommended it. Professional engineers EQ diagnostically, identifying specific problems in specific sources and addressing only those issues. This fundamental technique trains your ears while solving immediate problems. Step 1. Create a narrow bell boost, set gain to +8 to 10 dB and Q to 4 to 6. This creates an exaggerated magnifying glass that makes frequency problems obvious. Step 2. Slowly sweep the frequency across the spectrum from low to high, listening carefully. Problem frequencies will jump out as unpleasant resonances, boxiness, harshness, or muddiness. The boost acts as an audio highlighter, making subtle issues obvious. Step 3. When you find a problem frequency, stop and note the exact value. Listen to confirm this is actually a problem and not just a natural characteristic of the sound. Step 4. Convert your diagnostic boost to a corrective cut. Start with a moderate cut of -4 dB and a slightly wider Q of 2 to 3 than you use for sweeping. Narrow Q cuts can sound phasey and unnatural, so R toward wider unless the problem is extremely specific. Step 5. A-B compare with bypass, adjusting until the problem is solved without making the sound thin, lifeless, or obviously processed. The goal is improvement, not perfection. If you can't hear a clear benefit in context, undo the change. Resonances are sustained ringing at specific frequencies, often caused by room acoustics during recording or instrument construction. These jump out dramatically when boosted and typically benefit from narrow cuts. Mud and boxiness are accumulation in the 200-400 Hz range that makes sounds feel closed in, woolly, or unclear. Usually requires wider cuts to address effectively. Harshness is an aggressive, fatiguing quality, typically in the 2 to 5 kHz range, can be caused by cheap microphones, aggressive compression, or simply bright source material. Sibilance is excessive S and T sounds in vocals, typically 5 to 8 kHz. While de-essers handle this more elegantly, EQ cuts can help in mild cases. Honkiness is a nasal, telephone-like quality usually centered around 800 Hz, 1.5 kHz. Common in poorly recorded vocals and acoustic guitars. This exercise walks you through a complete diagnostic EQ session. Use a full mix, stem, or individual track with obvious frequency issues. A muddy bass, harsh vocal, or boxy guitar recording works well. Bypass all processing on the track and listen for 30 seconds straight, no tweaking, no analysis, just listening. Write down what bothers you in plain language. The low end feels muddy, something harsh in the high mids, the vocal sounds boxy. This creates a diagnosis before you reach for treatment. Add EQ 8 to the track. Create a narrow bell boost of +8 to 10 dB with a Q of 4 to 6, and slowly sweep from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. When you hit a frequency that makes your written problems worse, the mud gets muddier, the harshness becomes unbearable, you found your target. Note the frequency. Convert your diagnostic boost to a cut. Start conservative, -4 dB with a Q of 2 to 3. Listen in context, not soloed, to determine if the problem is improved. Adjust gain and Q as needed. You may need more cut, or you may need a wider Q to sound natural. Here's where most people make mistakes. They A-B compare without matching levels, and louder always sounds better. Add a utility device after EQ 8 and adjust its gain to compensate for any volume change from your cuts. Then toggle EQ 8's bypass to compare. The question isn't, which is louder, it's which serves the mix better. Enable EQ8's Analyze function to see where your cuts landed. This visual confirmation helps build your frequency awareness, but remember, your ears made the decision, the analyzer just confirms it. If the analyzer shows a cut at 350 Hz, but you can't hear an improvement, trust your ears and reconsider the move. Solo your track, then unsolo it. Does your EQ work improve the track in the context of the full mix? A change that sounds great in solo might not matter or might even hurt when everything plays together. If the improvement isn't clear in context, consider undoing the change. Boosting when cutting would achieve the same result more transparently. If you want the highs to stand out more, consider cutting the mids rather than boosting the highs. Cutting removes masking, boosting adds energy. The result can sound similar, but cuts typically sound more natural and leave more headroom. Using Q that's too narrow for musical boosts. Narrow boosts, Q above 4.5, create resonant ringing that sounds unnatural and phasey. Reserve narrow Q for cuts. Use wide Q, 0.5 to 1.5. For any boost you want to sound musical and organic, relying on the spectrum analyzer instead of ears, the analyzer shows you what's happening, not what sounds good. A peak on the analyzer isn't automatically a problem. A flat line isn't automatically good. Train yourself to identify problems by ear first, then verify with visual tools. Overprocessing, 8 moves when 2 or 3 would suffice. EQ, 8 offers 8 bands, but that doesn't mean you should use them all. Each band adds phase shift and potential artifacts. If you're using more than 3 to 4 bands on a single source, consider whether you're trying to fix a fundamental problem that EQ can't solve, not level matching when A/B comparing. Louder sounds better. This is a psychoacoustic fact that will fool you every time. When you boost frequencies, the signal gets louder. When you cut, it gets quieter. Use utility to compensate so you're comparing tone, not volume. EQing in solo without checking in context. A track that sounds perfect in solo might fight with other elements in the mix. Always make final EQ decisions while listening to the full mix, or at minimum, with the most important related elements playing. EQ the snare with the kick playing, EQ guitars with vocals playing, and so on. Applying EQ before identifying the problem. Reaching for EQ because everyone cuts 400 Hz or vocals need presence at 3 kHz leads to generic unfocused mixing. Every source is different. Diagnose first, then treat. EQ8 excels at precision work requiring detailed control, surgical cuts to remove specific resonances, MS processing for stereo manipulation, multiple simultaneous corrections, and any situation where visual feedback aids your decisions. It's your primary mixing EQ for detailed work on individual tracks and buses. Channel EQ provides quick, broad stroke tone shaping with a simpler interface. Use it when you need fast adjustments without the complexity of 8 bands, quick high-pass filtering, simple presence boosts, or rough tone shaping during arrangement when you'll refine later. EQ3 offers DJ-style frequency kills with 3 bands, low, mid, and high, that can completely remove frequency ranges. Use it for live performance, komenchi, einchi, dramatic arrangement effects, or creative sound design where you want to isolate or eliminate entire frequency regions rather than make subtle corrections. The choice isn't about quality. All 3 EQs sound clean and professional. It's about workflow. EQ8 for precision, channel EQ for speed, EQ3 for performance and dramatic effects. Mastering EQ8, or any equalizer, requires developing intuitive frequency awareness that only comes through deliberate practice. Every time you sweep to find a problem frequency, you're training your ears to recognize that frequency range. Over time, you'll start hearing that's around 300 Hz, or there's something harsh around 3 kHz without needing to sweep. Manage ear fatigue by working at moderate volumes, taking 5-minute breaks every 30-45 minutes, and switching between headphones and monitors. Fatigued ears make poor decisions, particularly in the high frequencies where harshness lives. Check your work on multiple playback systems. EQ decisions that sound great on studio monitors might translate poorly to earbuds, car speakers, or laptop speakers. Use reference tracks, professionally mixed songs in similar genres to calibrate your ears and verify your tonal balance. Finally, embrace restraint as a core principle. The goal of EQ is balance in context, not perfection in isolation. If you can't articulate why a move improves the mix, reconsider making it. The best EQ work often goes unnoticed. It simply makes the music sound right without calling attention to itself.